Hi, I'm Jennifer Shveta-Jordan, and I own Unabridged Press, which I'm calling like a micro business, like a microbrewery, because well, it's sort of just me now. And I went to a class a couple weeks ago, and nobody knew what the word unabridged meant. So does anybody here know what that means? Yes, Joseph.
Complete and uncut.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Exactly, complete and uncut. There used to be books some time ago, and they were larger if they had all the information, and they were smaller if they didn't. Not quite as small as like Cliff's Notes. Does anybody even know what Cliff's Notes are? Okay, a couple people do. All right, so we're doing news and features, and I'll just tell you, I quit my job like 5 years ago this month, so that's very exciting. And I didn't actually have a plan. I just had this idea of some kind of podcast in my mind. And I have a parallel career as a journalist, and you'll meet Aaron in a moment. I'm sorry, I have a parallel career as a caregiver, AKA, we call it direct support professional, at Emmaus Community of Pittsburgh. And Aaron, you'll meet in a minute, and I met there, and she said, I heard you're on the radio, and that's what I want to do. And so we started making this happen. And then 2 years ago, I saw that somebody who worked here was pregnant, and I asked Andy if I could fill in, because I knew that meant she wasn't going to be here every day. And he said yes, and I think it was like the second day I was here, they had this crazy Halloween symposium right here that's now called the Decomposium. And Jonas in the back did this, spoke about this crazy research. I think it was like about ghosts having sex and people blaming pregnancy on ghosts and things like that. Right? So I said, well, yeah, that's really awesome, but could we do something like that with disability? Because that's what we're focused on. So lo and behold, 2 years later, we got some funding from the FISA Foundation. We do workshops with people with disabilities who are interested in learning media skills, primarily podcasting and production. And yeah, now I think we're going to play our highlights film. Am I able to do that all by myself? Do I just press play? What's our title?
Hi, I'm Nick Tomarello, a student at Point Park University. Today's episode was filmed at our Center for Media Innovation.
Brian, I really enjoy being funny. I consider it my superpower.
Yes.
I am hilarious on Facebook. I love to laugh. And frankly, I have an awesome laugh. But it can be hard to express humor with some of my limitations. How can I show off my funny side?
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. is, of course, a top travel destination. It's also a foodie heaven, but many restaurants are often out of reach for diners with disabilities. A Washington Post reader pointed out this problem. She wrote to food critic Tom Sietsema, so he started including accessibility in reviews. Tom joins us by phone today.
This is Erin, who I promised you'll meet in a moment. And that's it. That's our highlights video. Do you want to coming up here? Okay, so this is Erin Gannon, and as I mentioned, she really had this idea to be on a podcast, and we started that. Erin is you've been very active throughout your life.
Yes, I have.
Special Olympics, Miracle League, Achieva, performing arts since you were a little kid.
Actually, I do CLO.
Right, Center for Civic Light Opera is what they used to call it.
Yeah.
It's just CLO now. But you're still doing that,
Yes,
performing
I am.
arts classes, and you never miss your Thursday. And then you also volunteer.
I volunteer at SHIM, Interfaith Movement.
South Hills Interfaith Movement. So, and you work at Achieva.
Yes.
And we'll talk about what else you do there in a moment. I just want to say Mark, who you saw up here, is a Community College of Allegheny County student. He couldn't be with us today. I think he was busy with school. Interesting thing about Mark, you saw that he doesn't speak in the traditional way, so he prepares his questions before an interview. He puts them in his Tobii Dynavox machine, and then you might have seen the sort of tennis ball on his head, so he just kind of launches them whenever he's doing an interview. So, Elisa is not here.
She'll be in shortly.
Okay, thank you. Elisa Grishman participated in one of our workshops. She is a community activist. She was the voice you heard talking about the Washington Post restaurant reviewer. That was a podcast we're working on for next year called Around the World in ADAs. Nobody laughed. Okay. ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, will be 30 years next year. So this is the 30th year of the signing, and then next year is the 30th year of the enactment, and amazing bipartisan piece of legislation, which never happens now, but I think that one of the things that I think is interesting about disability is it doesn't discriminate, right? So between political party or age or sex or socioeconomic class. In fact, there's a fellow who, a young man, he's not here, but he is a Trump, fan? Trump voter, and he goes to school here, and he actually has Tourette's syndrome, and he's very interested in helping as well. So, let's see, Dara just walked in. So I'm just naming different people sort of on the team. And Dara made desserts. I don't know if she's back putting them up, but she's somewhere around here. Oh, she's back there. She took a workshop that we did here in the Center for Media Innovation, and since she has this interest in food, I set up this interview for her with the disabled chef. That's the guy's name, and he has this logo of a wheelchair, except that it's a plate where the wheel is, and there's cutlery. He's a blogger in England, so they talked about disability and cooking, and Dara's also interested in doing a podcast in the future on self-care, right? Disability and self-care, and also sexuality, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Stay tuned. Joseph said he didn't mind if I introduced him. He's right up here. Did you want to stand up or no?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Joseph Smith I met through the Joey Travolta. Actually, I didn't meet you through there. I saw you photographing at other events.
I saw you May 18th of last year.
Right. What was that event?
It was at a synagogue. It was at Water Shalom Synagogue.
Yes.
That's how you get me business card. We start talking about disabilities. It was on Thursday, not May 18th of 2018.
Wow. Yeah. So Joseph Smith attends the Joey Travolta Film Camp / Arts for Autism that Evolve Coaching runs, and I came into his classroom with some other folks who aren't here, some other students from Point Park, and we did a workshop on podcasting. And then Joseph did an interview, which is actually 2 interviews, which are on Unabridged Press now, and one is Terza is just walked in, Terza DeCaria. She'll talk about her arts program and an interview with Bill O'Driscoll as well. And Bill will be here at the end of our session from WESA. You have a good place to take photos now that I invited you. Yeah. You can, actually this is you can take everybody's photo from here. You could wave. Let's wave. That would be fun. Okay. Good. Thank you, Joseph. So, you're gonna get bored, aren't you? Standing up here. I'm gonna let you talk. I swear. So I've been a journalist for 25 years, and most recently at the Allegheny Front, which is an environmental radio program on WESA Public Radio, and I was there for about 14 years. And I met Erin on the bus, on the 41 bus, 41 Barco bus. She was dancing, she's embarrassed, but she had her headphones on and she was just having a good time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to be dancing right now. I have to get to know her. And so I went up, and I know you don't remember this, because a wonderful thing about Erin is, even if she doesn't know who you are, she'll be like, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. Look who's here. Which will. So Aaron and I met, and I had been working at Emmaus, and I don't know how we started talking about Emmaus, but I was like, do you know my friend
You
Cece?
were one of my caretakers.
Right. But before that, there's a woman, Cece Wagner, who's the reason for this organization, Emmaus Community of Pittsburgh, to exist.
Actually, Cece's one of my best friends, and I've known her for like maybe 25 years.
And you live with her.
And I live with her and my other best friend, Marissa Niwa.
I think I was actually going to transition into at Emmaus Community. We have they're technically legally called group homes, but our executive director does not like to call them that. She calls them family style living homes. And I wonder, not everybody knows what a group home is. Could you talk about what your living experience is like?
I actually have been living there for, I'm not sure how many years.
I think about 4.
About 4 years already, and this is actually not my first time, but to be with Emmaus, because it's actually, I'm loving every minute of it, loving the staff, and got to do a project with Jennifer Jordan,
That's right.
out for this year.
And yes, so do you want to tell the story? So you might have seen up here that we had the logo, Look Who's Here, and that's the name of the podcast Aaron started. So would you want to say why?
Every time someone walks in our door, because it's sort of like a revolving door, so each time someone walks in, I go, Look Who's Here, and we made that into a project and kept on expanding a little bit more.
What is, can you say, I didn't prepare you for this, but what's the hardest part of living in a group home?
The hardest part is dealing with,
Sorry. Here's what I was going to guess. You want to say? Because this is, I think, a hard part in my experience for you and other residents, is there's such a high staff turnover.
yes.
And yeah, so in case you don't know, for people with disabilities, I think it's just intellectual disabilities, but I'm not sure other disabilities. There is a waiting list in Pennsylvania of 13,000 people waiting for a home like Aaron lives in, or other kinds of support services, maybe to live in their own home. So these are people, at this point, they're probably living with elderly parents and don't have a place that's supportive of them. So let's see, would you like to say who you've interviewed over time here?
There's 2 of them I've already done, which was my one with Neil Walker.
Can you tell them who Neil Walker is?
Neil Walker is a famous baseball player. And I got great stuff from him, and I did my interview on him. And there was another interview that I've done.
Dee Barker? Why don't you talk about Dee Barker?
It's Dee. She's my personal trainer. And I done all kinds of exercises. I've done kickboxing, and I've done a lot of different stuff with her.
And I want to say that she mentioned when you interviewed her, that was her first interview here. And I was so nervous and stressed. Aaron was fine. But I was thinking in my head, we were never, ever going to do this again because I was too nervous. And then when Aaron was done, she was like, let's go just interview people on the street. And I'm like, okay, that's.
I wanted to try it out.
And you did. And I'm going to say, so Aaron, just do you remember what your question was when you walked up to people on the south side?
What it's like have someone with disabilities.
What it's like to have somebody with disabilities in your life, or do you know anybody with a disability? That sort of thing. And I want to say, I hope I'm not offending any student here, but when I worked on the Allegheny front, I had college students who would not go up to somebody and ask them questions. And we were in the south side, and in fact, they told me that nobody would talk to them. And it was just like, if you've been in the south side, that's not even possible. So obviously it was their nervousness, but Aaron has such a boldness, about you, and a charisma that it's hard to, there was that one man who was actually kind of grumpy, but when you started talking to him, he was like, I was hoping you were going to come interview me.
Yes.
Okay, so Neil Walker and recently, there's something in town called the Real Abilities Film Festival. It happens in October. Film Pittsburgh puts it on, and it's all focused on disability. I think it lasts a good 10 days. And Erin went there and
I
interviewed
went
some
there
people.
to speak, and I was speaking with Special Olympics actually.
Yeah.
And I'm also on the board with Special Olympics, so we do a lot of different sports and different activities, and everybody loves what they do in their sport.
And Erin actually got a bronze medal playing golf in Ireland. I don't know. I don't know how many people in the room can say that. I certainly can't. Okay, so do you want to talk about, I don't know if you can, but what's over there, that special room, through that door? Sorry, it's the podcast studio.
Oh yeah, one of my interviews that I've done with my trainer D, my first interview was over here in this
The TV studio.
the TV station.
And then the podcast room, I don't know if you remember, it was the first room you were over in here. And I took this beautiful photo of her. And if you go on Unabridged Press, you'll see it. And actually, Brian O'Neill is a Sunday columnist for the Post-Gazette. And he wrote a piece about Erin. And that photo is in there. But then it was so cool. A couple weeks ago, the Real Abilities Film Festival was happening. Erin got to interview the opening night filmmaker.
Yes, I have talked to her and I asked a personal question.
You did. Which personal question?
Don't you remember?
No. I don't remember.
It's one of the interviews I did, and it's sort of based on my parents.
Okay. Let's talk about that in the end because I think that's going to be so. When you were about to interview the filmmaker Genevieve Clay Smith, you were like, "This is where I started," and that was really cool for me to see because in 3 years, how far you've come. Would you want to talk about how you get ready for an interview?
Actually, I work with Jennifer with most of my questions and go over them, so to prepare me for all my interviews.
And you have been now using a computer, doing some research yourself.
I have like an iPad now, and also use a computer as well, so which is kind of really perfect. So I'm now getting into it, which is so cool.
And I didn't know, had you ever used a computer before?
I did,
Okay.
but the one that I had got a little bit too old for me. Not
Okay.
too old, but how to use.
Yeah. So I just want to say about Erin that, Down syndrome is a cognitive issue, but Erin has shown me so much. I almost, having worked with people with quote unquote disabilities, I kind of don't even know what that word means anymore because everything that somebody does with a disability is, something I would do myself.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I kind of went through when I was growing up, and when I first started out, my let's say a little bit of Jennifer can help me out and get me started. I asked Jennifer how did she get into radio, and I wanted to try it. So, and I thought it'd be a great idea.
So, I want to how much more time do I have? Okay, I need to wrap it up. But finally, Erin now has a new job because we started doing this. Would you want to mention what you do there?
I work at Akiva on the south side, and I also work in communications.
You could say more because it's pretty amazing. Your show.
Actually, working there at Akiva, and also got my new position at Akiva and working in communications. The reason I got this new job because of all the interviewing and having fun with it, especially with my friend and caretaker.
Okay, so they want me to wrap up, so I'm going to say two more things. Erin, 2 out of 2 years, has gotten Western Pennsylvania Press Club Golden Quill Awards for journalism, and you beat out some longtime journalists.
Yes.
And then Ballyhoo. See, that's what I was trying to get you.
It's a new look, actually not a new logo, but when I started to work with communications, and I came out with a show called Value with communications.
And it's a really cool show. Can you talk about the 2 interviews that are already out?
The 2 that already came out was one I did on Stony Brook. It's called Horse Therapy.
Mhm.
And I don't know the other one.
Okay, so you went down to the strip district and you learned about a job program.
Yes, I did. Actually, it's a restaurant, and I remember this, and I forget the name of it, so.
It was this Mom and Galley? Is that what you
Yes, Mom and Galloway, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And one of them, I got the interview with my behavior specialist.
All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. That's us, and Erin is kind of the reason we're all here today, because of that morning at the breakfast table when she said, I want to get on the radio. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Erin. Next, I would like to introduce to you Michelle Steiner, who is a paraprofessional or a teacher's aide working with students with special needs. She is a contributor for themighty.com on disability-related articles, and she encourages and educates others on disability topics through public speaking. Welcome, Michelle!
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Steiner, and I would like to thank Unabridged Press, Point Park University, and everyone that is here today for giving me the chance to speak. Before I speak, I want to play a little game with everybody. I don't have any prizes, but I have a fun little game to kind of start us off. There's one thing that I have in common with some celebrities that I'm going to list, and I want you to try to figure out what the one thing that I share in common with all of them is. What do I have in common with Cher, Tommy Hilfiger, Whoopi Goldberg, and Keira Knightley? Just take a second to figure out what I might have in common with them. The one thing that I have in common with all of them is these celebrities have a learning disability, and they didn't let that stop them from being successful. And I have a learning disability, and I'm not going to let that stop me from being successful as well. So what are learning disabilities? Learning disabilities are brain-based disabilities. They can involve math, reading, social skills, visual perception, hand dexterity, and hand coordination skills. And the person that has a learning disability has a normal IQ. It's just that they learn differently. They have one high area, generally, and then they have a lower area as well. For example, in my case, I'm very good at reading and with writing. And one of the things that I really struggle with is math. I was first diagnosed with my learning disability in kindergarten. My preschool teacher thought there was something atypical with my development, but I was my parents' first child, so they didn't have a lot to base on what typical development was for that. So my parents decided to not go with the recommendations of keeping me in preschool for another year, but sent me off to kindergarten. And when I was in kindergarten, that's when I really started to struggle. I struggled a lot with social skills. I was an only child for many years, so that was already hard for me to identify with the other kids. And then whenever I got in there, it was the beginning is having problems with math skills and my visual perception. And that was a really key thing too, because I would get a dot-to-dot worksheet, and I thought, oh, I did a really good job, and when it turned back, it was definitely not done correctly. So I had to repeat kindergarten, and I started to receive services. Some of the services that I received were specialty instruction. I had some things with my disability where I had classes, especially in math. Also, I was integrating with my peers for science and social studies. It was really difficult with the math. That was the main part that we really I really struggled with. It was trying to understand how math worked, trying to do memorizing the multiplication tables. I still today cannot read an analog clock to save my life. Gym class was a nightmare. I really struggled with trying to play like games, and I still don't do competitive sports. My handwriting was also a big issue as well. I have poor handwriting because of my limited hand dexterity, and I can still remember, I think it was first grade, I had W's on my report card, indicating weakness for handwriting. And my students to this day cannot decipher what my handwriting is. Social skills were really difficult as well. I can remember not being able to relate to the students that were in my special needs classes. Most of them struggled more with writing and reading, and I had more of a math-based disability. And then the regular ed students, I had a hard time relating with them as well. A lot of them didn't think that I was smart, so they didn't want to have a lot to do with me. And I also received speech therapy for the first 5 years of school. I have trouble hearing with when I was younger with having ear infections, so it was affecting how I was hearing sounds as well. During middle school, things got a lot easier in terms of academics. It was more based upon application rather than trying to, rote memory, which I really struggled with. And it got harder though with social skills as students started to form like little groups and things like that. The divide got a lot bigger. And another thing that I struggled with is when we had specials. I can still remember taking shop class, and I was able to make a birdhouse, and I was able to make a duck, but when we got to metal shop, that's when I failed that year shop class. Art class was really difficult. It was more of the product rather than the process, and when you really struggle with visual perception and fine motor skills, that's when I had a lot of the difficulties with that. But I think the worst special I had to take was music. I had a teacher that he wanted everybody to learn how to play something on the piano, and he had other students try to teach us, and we had to get up in front of the whole class, and I played on the piano, and I didn't do very well, and he stood in front of the whole class and screamed at me. So, yeah, that was a difficult time. But throughout the years, it got a lot easier. When I went up to high school, I was in all regular classes except for resource room and math. And academically, I was in for other classes for social studies, science, and English. And I knew I wanted to go to college. That's something I knew I always wanted to do. But one of the biggest fears with the math was how were we going to get around doing SATs? And how was I going to be able to handle math at a college level? And I even had a teacher that told me, well, with your math, let's try to push you into vocational training schools. And I have nothing against people that go to vocational training schools. I think they offer a wonderful program. But there was nothing that interested me. And luckily, I had my parents that advocated for me. And I met with a group that would be taking over with getting me help for school and that sort of thing. And I remember asking him, how am I going to be able to handle taking the SATs when I haven't taken beyond the basic math? And I can still remember the art counselor telling me, well, a lot of schools look for how well you did at community college, so that was the route we were going to take. I was able to graduate from high school, and that summer I had to be retested for learning disabilities with that agency. And I can still remember, I'm a terrible test taker. I've always had to receive extended test time. Sometimes having the test very loud to me has helped in the past. And when I took the test, the scores came back pretty low. And I can remember that I had the caseworker wanted to lie about that. And my parents said, no, you're going to be honest. And I guess be careful what you wish for, because they told me that I was never going to go beyond a community college. And that really stuck with me. I can still remember applying for college, going there, and it really affected me. I didn't get the help that I needed with the extended test time or a note taker because I didn't want the stigma. And I really struggled with my grades. And I can remember a professor telling me, well, you may not be able to get, your job choices are going to be extremely limited. Let's say that you're working in a daycare. You're not going to know how many pieces of paper for an art project. So it wasn't until I had a professor that told me outside of my department, I was really struggling in her science class, and she said, why don't we get you some extended test time? And I started to receive services. But despite everything, I was able to graduate with an associate's degree in early childhood education. I worked for some child care centers. I worked for a Head Start program. But I always wanted more for myself. And eventually I was able to move out on my own. And financially I had to move back in with my parents. And I was at a job that I was at, and it was close to where my parents were, but I always wanted more. And I thought, this is a really good opportunity. Why don't I just apply for college? Again, try to go back and get my bachelor's degree. And this didn't have a lot of support with my parents. They were wonderful. They're wonderful people. They've always been great. But they thought, I have a degree. Why do you need to go on and get another one? Well, as fate had it, the job that I was at ended up downsizing. So I was able to throw myself into being a full-time student at Slippery Rock University. And the most important thing I did was I went and got extended test time. I had the note-taker service. I was able to get tutoring when I needed it. And I was able to be a full-time student. But most importantly, I was able to talk to my professors. They knew that I had a learning disability and what I needed to be successful. And that really helped me because I was able to get on Dean's List for one semester. I was able to graduate with a bachelor's degree in community programming for Americans with disabilities. And this is from the psychiatrist that told me I was never going to be able to do it. Today I work as a teaching assistant with special needs children for the Butler Area School District. I'm married to the love of my life. We've been married for 4 years. I'm unable to drive, but I have friends and family that can take me places, or I'm able to walk to where I need to go as well. I've been published on themighty.com with disability-related articles, and I had a couple of professors that told me that my writing needed work, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I also have just been able to do so much, and part of that is God has been, my faith has been a big factor too. God has opened up so many doors that I could never have been able to open up for myself. I still struggle with math as well. I can't read time on an analog clock. I also struggle with on the grocery store, trying to figure out how much I'm spending and that sort of thing. But despite all of this, I've been able to be successful. And part of that success has been having a growth mindset, and also with having self-determination. And the beauty of self-determination is that everybody uses that. If you're at the grocery store, you have to deal with having a crowd of people, or you have to deal with having dealing with a grumpy clerk, but you get your groceries, and that's the person making the decisions. And also with having a growth mindset, that has helped me out as well. A growth mindset is where it's changing how you think about yourself and getting that spirit of resilience. So I can tell myself, I've had so many people tell me, well, with your disability, you're never going to be able to do this. But I can tell myself, yes, there are things that are difficult, but I can do this. I can handle this. And I think it's another important thing is telling people that it's okay to make mistakes. There's been so many things that have been discovered by mistakes. Penicillin, an ice cream cone. That really cheered one of my students up when he was having a bad day. I told him that, well, everybody makes mistakes. And it's the power of not yet. Just because somebody isn't able to do something right now, it doesn't mean that they're never going to be able to do it. And I'm going to close with the not yet poem that I found on Teachers Pay Teachers. The power of yet. I don't know. I can't do this. Take a deep breath and remember the power of yet, as in, I don't know this yet. I can't do this yet. I don't understand this yet. Thank you.
Great job, Michelle. Next, we're going to have Reagan Tischler. who is a junior public relations major here at Point Park. She played for the women's soccer team her first 2 years of college and is an active member of Point Park University's Strong Women, Strong Girls chapter. Reagan is originally from a small town in Ohio called St. Mary's. She's here today to talk about her experience with the sleep disorder narcolepsy. Welcome, Reagan.
So I'm here to talk about a little bit of a different disorder or disability, but it's one all the same. It's kind of like a last minute decision for me as well. It's not something I'm used to sharing with people. A lot of my good friends back home don't even know I have narcolepsy. It's kind of been like a secret that I've kept. I was diagnosed my senior year of high school, but I've had it probably since middle school. And so I'm just here to kind of explain it because I know there's a lot of misinformation out there on narcolepsy and sleep disorders in general. So here's a video kind of representing narcolepsy in a movie, if it plays. Up there it is. No, it's okay. That's fine. But the video is just of a girl, and she explains that she has narcolepsy, sleep disorder, and she just would randomly just fall over any time, which is not really accurate for narcolepsy. So what is narcolepsy? It's a neurological disorder. As of now, there's not a cure for it. It's just something you have to learn to live with, and there is different treatments that you can get to kind of help regulate. But it's rare. It's 1 in every 200,000 people are diagnosed, and it's also commonly misdiagnosed. If you don't have narcolepsy with cataplexy, narcolepsy can often just be misinterpreted as you're just a sleepy person, or you're going through a hormonal change and things like that. But luckily, I guess not really luckily, but kind of luckily for me, I had cataplexy, which I'll kind of explain later. So it was easy to diagnose my narcolepsy because I had cataplexy. And so one of the possible causes that they think, which I think might be the most accurate that they have, is the low levels of hypocretin. It's also genetic, but no one in my family has ever been diagnosed, so I don't know if that's accurate. If it is, maybe they just were misdiagnosed or not diagnosed. But the hypocretin it helps with the sleep-wake cycle. So when you're falling to sleep, there's those 4 stages of sleep that you go into. But with narcolepsy, it's all kind of a blurred line. It's like you just go straight into that deep REM sleep. And some symptoms. The main symptom that people often mistake for just falling over is the excessive daytime sleepiness. And so this is the equivalent to if you haven't slept in 3 days, is what it feels like. So it'll just be random, a lot of times during 3-hour classes, or just really anytime. And it's when you get that, all of a sudden you have this urge that you just have to sleep. And so usually you can control it, you're not just gonna fall over. But like an example was when I was at Walt Disney World, it just happened, and I told my mom, I'm gonna fall asleep, like I have to sleep right now. And so we sat on a bench, and I literally just fell asleep on the bench right there for a good 10 minutes. Woke up, rejuvenated, I was good to go. But when you fall into those deep sleeps, you go straight into REM sleep. So sometimes another symptom is hallucinations or lucid dreaming or sleep paralysis, and that's because of this sleep-wake cycle is really not, you don't go into the cycle, you go straight into that last stage of sleep. And so sometimes you'll start to even hallucinate, which is in extreme cases. But also there's lucid dreaming that I have on here, which is you have these vivid dreams. And sometimes you're able to control them because you're still kind of awake. So you can make yourself wake up, or you can change the circumstance of the dream and things like that, which it's actually taught nowadays. Lucid dreaming is kind of like a skill that some people try to teach themselves, but with narcolepsy, it's something that I was kind of just dealt with, but I don't mind it at all. And then this is a video that shows cataplexy, but I don't think it's gonna work. But cataplexy is often mistaken with epilepsy. It's in high emotion situations, so a lot of the main one is laughter. So if someone were to make me laugh at something that was really hilarious, I would just lose muscle control. And a lot of times it's when I'm sitting down, luckily, so a lot of times it's with the head, I'll kind of like nod off. And people are always like, people kind of compare it to being drunk. They're like, are you okay? Are you like on something? But no, it's just my cataplexy. So I try to hide it as best I can. I've kind of like learned how to be able to control that when I'm in these situations. But also, if I can't, I just explain to people, or sometimes I'll just kind of nod it off and just pretend like it didn't happen. But the example, this is like an intense example, is the girl is laughing and she kind of just like completely falls down. And a book on narcolepsy kind of explains it best. It's like a puppet and a puppeteer. So most people have control of their own puppet. But with cataplexy, when you get in that high emotion situation, the control just goes away. So how a puppet will just fall when the controller is no longer using the puppet. And it's often like kind of joked about as well. Like if that would happen to me at soccer, for example. The most intense time it ever happened was at soccer. We were warming up and it happened, and I actually fell over to the ground. And it's like laughed about, and it's fine. Like I have a pretty positive outlook on narcolepsy. So I'm able to joke about it, but at the same time, it is a serious symptom that people with narcolepsy suffer from. And so this is how I was able to be diagnosed, because I had that as well. But some people that have narcolepsy in less extreme cases don't have the cataplexy. Some more symptoms are sleep paralysis, like I kind of said earlier, and that's kind of like when you're waking up from an intense nap. So if you just fall asleep from EDS and you just had this super intense dream, and then you're waking up, so your part of your mind starts to wake up, but not all of your mind has, like your muscles haven't began again. And a lot of people suffer from some sleep paralysis, not just narcoleptics. And you're just this inability to move when you wake up. So you're aware that you're awake, but your body hasn't really fully woken up yet. So you don't have control of your body. And so a lot of times it's with nightmares. So if you're having a nightmare and you wake up suddenly, but you can't move. So a lot of people think this is like a scary occurrence, but I feel like since it's common for me, I just know, I usually am aware, I'm like, okay, just wait for your body to wake up. But it's something that a lot of people, different people suffer from as well, not just narcoleptics. And then insomnia is another symptom. And one of the treatments that kind of goes with that is sodium oxybate. And that is a sedative. And they'll give you this sedative so that at night you won't have the sleeplessness. But that medication was something that I just made the personal decision not to do because it was really dangerous. If you're a college student like me or 21, like drinking, it's not good for my lifestyle personally. But for medication-wise, the most common one is like a stimulant. Adderall is very common to get diagnosed with if you have, or to get treated with if you have narcolepsy. And antidepressants as well, which I've never tried, but I'm on a stimulant right now, and that helps. But overall, I found that the thing that helps me the most is just having a routine. If, I decide that I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do something really intense, like a 3-hour class for me is like an event that I need to prepare for. Maybe take like a quick nap before, prepare my body for that. Also, exercise is huge. That's if I start to get really tired and I'm just noticing a change in my mentality overall for sleepiness, I'll exercise. And exercise in the morning is the best thing. Healthy foods, no low carbs. That's really a big one for me. That the melatonin and carbs kind of really makes me sleepy. And really just a good night's sleep. But you have to think about if you're gonna have insomnia. So always kind of planning ahead, giving yourself an extra couple hours if that happens. So if you have an 8 a.m. to not go to bed at 1 is a big thing. But just from my own experience, the electric brain that I wrote on there is best described as sometimes if I'm falling asleep really fast. And so I'm like, I have to sleep right now. And I'll start to fall asleep. It's like I can feel the static electricity in my brain. So it's like my brain trying to regulate all those different hormones going on and all the sleepiness and lack of hypocretin. And so that's something that I've noticed recently, and it's something that I don't know if other people with narcolepsy experience it, but it's one of the main things that I would say I noticed recently with my narcolepsy. Remaining positive is a huge thing if you have narcolepsy. not taking things too seriously, because a lot of people don't take the disability itself seriously. So you kind of have to adjust your mentality with that. And I don't think, not saying that's right or wrong, but for myself, just try to remain positive and always see the positives of my experience. So another positive is the lucid dreams. I've had these really crazy lucid dreams, and I've started keeping a dream journal, and that has really helped me with the memory loss and things like that. And so I'll have these vivid dreams, and so it's gotten to the point where I even have friends sometimes message me about their own dreams, because I've kind of gotten really into the whole dream interpretation lifestyle. I really love that as something, it's like a passion out of mine. It's just to interpret these dreams, especially because they're so vivid and so intense. So, and I love to write them down in my dream journal. And I think that's something that's helped me personally. And that's a positive. I love that I have that. That's something that I look forward to. Sometimes if I'm falling asleep really intense, I can tell I'm going to have a vivid dream, I get excited. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good one. But that's just me. Exercise and diet is huge. I've gone on so many different diets. Every diet in the book. I've tried the keto, the paleo, 5-in-1, Altavia my mom has, all these different diets. And so for me, the best diet that I found is just organic foods and low carbs. But the keto diet is good and it's recommended if you have narcolepsy because of the lack of carbs. But at the same time, it's not really a healthy diet to just do everyday lifestyle. Keto is usually if you want to lose weight or gain fitness, which isn't something I'm necessarily looking to do. So, but diet is huge for me. I can tell I'm a completely different person if I ate the worst thing, if I had candy and 5 sandwiches or 5 pieces of bread, or high carbs, refined carbs specifically, versus if I woke up and ate some eggs out of a glass of water. I'm a different person. It's crazy. And a good night's sleep is also huge for me. My mom has always said, ever since I was little, that anytime I'm getting upset or anxious or really any type of situation where I'm high emotion, high intensity, or I'm sending her books on books about some issue that I'm recently passionate about, she's always just you need to sleep, go to bed. So the good night's sleep is everything for me personally. But narcolepsy is, it's not something that's really discussed. That's kind of why I decided to go, to discuss it. To kind of open that book, because it's not really something people talk about or are even familiar with at all. And so I think it's really important that you at least are aware that it's there, so that if you ever have a friend that says, oh, I might have narcolepsy or I might have this, you're able to kind of tell them what they should look for. And also, doctors are often misdiagnosing it. So it's really important that you have your facts straight, and also that you're just aware so you can help those people that do have narcolepsy. So just to close it out, Jimmy Kimmel has narcolepsy, and so he kind of has, I feel the same mentality about it as me, and he jokes about it and kind of just is lighthearted with it. And so one of his quotes is, truth be told, I'd rather have narcolepsy than not have it. When I get on a flight to Vegas, I'll fall asleep before the plane takes off, wake up after it's landed, which is definitely me. If I'm going on a road trip or something, I'm out, and then my mom's like, oh, we're here, perfect. I didn't have to worry about the long drive or anything, but it's just good to be lighthearted about it. But that's really it for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Reagan. Our next speaker, Jade Steele, is a 20-year-old Point Park University junior studying early childhood education. She grew up in the special education program here. She serves as a United Student Government Senator for the School of Education and works at Kennywood as a ride operator and scare actor. She plans to be a first grade teacher after graduation, working on curriculum research. Everyone, welcome Jade.
Hi guys, I don't know how to use a microphone, so this is probably a bad idea. I have no voice control, so if I'm too loud, just let me know. So like she said, my name is Jade. So I'm actually going to be talking today a little bit about Certified Autism Centers with the IBCCES. So we're going to go into my little introduction, just so everybody knows that it's my dog. And I thought it was a very, very important photo to put in here. I don't know why, but that's the one we chose. So like Stacey said, I am a 20-year-old junior that studies here at Point Park University. I'm an early childhood education major with plans to pursue my doctorate in special education administration one day, to do curriculum research for students on the spectrum. I do work at Kennywood. I am a rides operator and scare actor there during Fright Nights. And I am diagnosed with ADHD and ASD. I have high functioning autism and ADHD. Those two are really fun together, I promise. I promise you, you don't have to experience it yourself. I'm here to tell you. They're great. It's fine. And so I work really, really close with the disability services here at Point Park as well. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about the IBCCES and how Certified Autism Centers kind of work, because there's something that a lot of people don't know about, and it's something that I'm very, very much interested in. So this is, if before I get into this, does anybody know what the IBCCS is? Okay. Any guesses? Any guesses? Okay. So it's in the next slide, and I can't rattle it off myself. But so we're going to go to that, and then we're going to come back. So it's the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards. So basically what that means is they work with certifications for basically intellectual disabilities. They are international. They go through 12 different countries. On the website, they have certified autism resources, whereas there's a lot of resources out there for educators who teach kids with special needs like myself, people who work just alongside special needs, and just for neurotypical people in general. There's different resources out there, but these are ones that have been certified and have the information that is fact-checked and is most useful. And they also work for education, healthcare, and corporate companies. So I'm going to go back real fast because I put these slides in the wrong order. So a big thing that I've noticed recently in my time, I did not know that I had autism until I was 16 years old. My family was like, we're just going to push it aside for a minute. Not that I didn't have services. I knew I had ADHD. They didn't want to put anything else on me. So I was like, oh, okay. That's when I got my driver's license. So since then, I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, well, our business is autism friendly. That's great. I don't know what that means. Not gonna lie. I don't know what that means. So you like autistic people? So it's kind of like, it's not regulated in any sense. You don't know what staff training's like. You don't know if they know not to have, different senses. That you don't know if they have a sensory room. You don't know a lot of these things. With the IBCCES, that's part of being a certified autism center. So that's what we're going to get into now. So this is some of the benefits that come from being a certified autism center, which is the CAC. Which is over on this side. It's all certified autism centers meet the following criteria, but dedicated to serving individuals with autism. At least 80% of staff trained and certified in the field of autism, and is committed to ongoing training in autism. So this is the base. There's different levels of certifications that I will get into in a moment, but there's different benefits from becoming certified. As funny enough, the market for serving people with disabilities is one of the most underserved markets in the country, and it's one of the fastest growing markets in the travel industry. And working at an amusement park, I can say that is true. So also, a couple of the benefits that I did put on here, because I forgot, because I'm a mess, is an increase in revenue. Parents and teachers who have students or children who have autism are way more likely to go to a place that they know is certified. No, autism friendly doesn't tell me what you're going to do. Having the IBCCES certification tells me that your staff is trained, that you have went through the measures, that they have inspected your business, your company, your amusement park, your whatever, and that it is a good place for me to bring either myself or my students, as I'm an education major. And then there's also the representation that there are many travel sites. I don't know if anybody knows this, but there's many travel sites out there that are just for like good places to take kids with autism. And so once you become a certified autism center, you get put on that, and then you're introduced to a huge clientele. I actually spoke with a lady who has a hair salon on the other side of Pennsylvania, who their revenue went up by 45% in 2 years of becoming a certified autism center, and their clientele went up by 65%. So I don't have those numbers. I talked to her last night. So, and there are a couple of statistics about autism is that $262 billion is spent on autism-related services each year, and then 1 in every 59 children is identified with autism. And boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. So I guess I'm one of the rare ones. I don't know what that means. But then 34% of students with disabilities go to college. That's just with intellectual disabilities in general. There's not a lot of statistics out there for how many of those have autism. But I know since I started in school that the number has grown. Normally, I can now have a conversation with somebody and they'll be like, oh, well, this kid in my class has autism. I'll be like, oh, okay, so there's representation now a little bit more. So now I'm going to get into the different levels of certification. So there's travel, law enforcement, healthcare, and education. So whatever your business or company is, there's the blanket Certified Autism Center. And then there's, do you want it for travel or is it law enforcement? And it's all different training. And anybody that wants information, I can definitely do that. But it's very based on what your needs as a company is. And that's why the IBCCES is devoted to. They devote themselves to making things accessible for everybody, even with the disabilities that we can't see. So then the fun part of this little presentation is Kennywood. So has anybody been to Kennywood? Okay, awesome. Please don't complain to me about it. I do not take guest complaints. That is not my job. I hear it all the time. So, if for a lot of people didn't know, and I was talking to people about my presentation, and almost every single person said, I did not know that Kennywood was a certified autism center. Did anybody know that? No. Well, cool. You all just learned something. I did my job. So we became an IBCCES certified autism center this year. So this is our first year. I also worked there last year when we were not certified. So I have worked literally in both spectrums of it. And I can say, as somebody who lives with autism, it was one of the greatest things. As at least twice a day, I had a kid come up to me and tell me that had autism. I don't know why, but they really like to tell me. I don't know if I have a look or something. But so we all did staff training. There's sensory bag. There was sensory air, which is actually outside, which is actually really cool. It's the most low traffic area in the park. And so, unfortunately, there's no way to make it sensory friendly during Fright Nights, but it's not for kids anyway. So, that's my thing. Don't bring your kids to Kennywood during Fright Nights. That's my little plug for that. But so, autism is something that has affected my entire life. Absolutely affected my entire life. I have lived with this my entire life. Even that I didn't know. I was isolated in schools. I was told in 8th grade that I was going to be a dropout by my principal. I graduated with a 4.0 in high school, and I sent her every report card every 9 weeks. I do that. Thank you. And now I am here as a junior. And my entire goal is to make sure that everything is as accessible as possible, especially people on the spectrum, and being advocate for, especially with girls on the spectrum. As I said, it's 4 times more likely for boys to be diagnosed. And that doesn't mean that girls aren't diagnosed. It means that girls are misdiagnosed a lot of the times. I was diagnosed with, I can't remember what it was beforehand, but before they realized, because they're like, oh, she's a girl, so there's no way. I was like, eh. So that's kind of me. I'm a whole mess, so I don't really know where else to go from here. But does anybody have any questions for me? Yes.
For about 18 or 19 years, I've been working with people with cognitive differences, like autism. And the most frustrating thing to me on their behalf was when people would say, well, you can't do this. And they're saying it less now as people show what they can do. But I've been to so many IEPs where a student was told, you can't go to college, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. And I know that the certification process has probably got some ways of influencing this, but I'm wondering if you have any ideas how to go about changing people who try to place limits on others, besides just individually showing them everything you can do, which is a great.
So that's actually a little bit, the IBCCS is mostly for the certifications, but in general, my entire career pathway is exactly what you just said. I grew up in the IEP system. I sat through every single one because I was a control freak. And so I had not only people tell me that I couldn't do things, I had people tell my mom that I couldn't do things. My mom was a single mother. And so a big thing is that setting limitations is the way that a lot of people were taught. And so it goes back to teaching, and that's a big reason why I'm an educator, is teaching acceptance and teaching that there is absolutely no boundary that anybody can go against. Like, there's no boundary for any disability. It doesn't matter. There are people who don't have legs that run, and it just blows my mind. And so there are so many people out there that have done the impossible and done things that seem impossible. But so that's the entirety of what I want to do is I want to change that stigma. Yes.
What type of discrimination have you had to contend with when you were being on the spectrum and all?
That's actually a really good question. So I grew up in a very small area. It didn't really I've had, principals and stuff say, well, you're this person, you can't do that. Or I've been told to stop clicking my pen when I'm overstimulated. As far as discrimination, I have never really been discriminated against in the way that I would call it discrimination. I have been judged. I have had people say, oh, well, she's autistic. And I'm like, okay, tell me something I don't know. But so it's all a matter of how you look at it. I think a lot of times what people say to me is just in one ear not the other. The thing that I've had the most issues with is people who are close to me not understanding a lot of things. It took my boyfriend a very long time to understand how to live with somebody who had autism. And just, it's more of not people being educated. I don't think they're trying to be rude, but they're doing it in the process.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
So I work in the performing arts industry.
Okay.
And something that we're seeing an uptick in is sensory-friendly, autism-friendly performances.
I love that.
Right, but to your point, what should we be calling them? And can we be certified?
I absolutely believe that I do. I would have to look. I would believe that you guys would be able to be certified. Sensory friendly is an okay term. Autism friendly is more the term of when you're saying, oh, well, this business is autism friendly.
Sure.
So you're having sensory friendly shows as long as the information's out there about what those shows entail, then I think as long as there's information and you're like, okay, this is what we're committed to, it's more of when I say autism friendly isn't enough anymore. It's when people are like, oh, we're autism friendly, and then don't give reasons why they are. But I love that. Do you work with the CLO?
I do, yeah.
Awesome, I love that. I've been to sensory friendly shows, so
Hoping to do more.
love that. Does anybody else have any questions before I go? No? Okay, well, thank you guys very, very much.
Thanks so much, Jade. Our next speaker is Terza DeCario, who co-founded Creative Citizen Studios in 2013 and has nurtured the organization over the past 7 years as the director. Growing up with a talented sister who has Down syndrome inspired her to start an organization that highlights the abilities of this population. Terza studied arts management at Carnegie Mellon, where she studied arts and disability organizations from around the country. With over 14 years of experience in the arts and disability field in Tennessee, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Mexico, she saw an opportunity to create a quality arts program for adults with disabilities in Pittsburgh. Welcome, Terza.
Stacy. So I want to tell you a little bit about my organization in general. So Creative Citizen Studios, we are a group of artists with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we try to connect with the broader arts community as much as possible. So anybody here, one word that keeps coming up in other presentations is isolation. Anybody relate to that? Anybody, it's like, just feel like, okay, there's something about this very small community and these differences between people with disabilities and neurotypical people, it separates. And so one of our goals as an organization is to find ways to use the arts, specifically the visual arts, and sometimes we're growing into more performing arts, but our core art medium is the visual arts, using that to bring people together so that we can connect on a shared appreciation of creative energy and creative magic, and seeing that rather than seeing that first, rather than seeing disability first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about one specific partnership that we used to connect with the broader community. So, technical difficulties. We will see if we're...
I think it might play.
All right. Do you press space? I'm gonna.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay, great. So these images are just going to cycle through as I'm talking. So for 1 week last summer, first week in August, Creative Citizen Studios and the Andy Warhol Museum partnered for a creative workshop week. So what that meant is we had sort of 3 phases to every day. At the beginning of the day, we had private time in the art galleries before the museum opened to the public. So what you're seeing now is we could really get up close to some of these original artworks. We could really talk about what was Andy Warhol's life like? What was he exploring these different chapters of his life? So that was the first part of our day. The second part of our day was in the studio. Has anybody ever been to the Warhol Museum? The space in the basement, the Warhol workshop, the factory studio. So we could think about what we saw in the galleries in the morning and then put that into practice with our own ideas. So it was a group of 10 artists, and we used silkscreen techniques and Andy Warhol inspired techniques to make a body of work in the afternoon. But that wasn't quite enough, because that's still, we're really receiving the benefits that is the Andy Warhol Museum and absorbing all that is. We wanted to make sure that our group of artists could also be seen as a group of people who had the capacity to share those educational experiences with the broader community that visits the Warhol Museum. So after our time in the studio, we took a small, it was you had to be very careful and make sure it was a clean project. We couldn't just take art materials into the galleries and willy-nilly and paint on the floor. We took a clean version of what we were doing in the factory into the lobby of the museum. So as visitors were coming in and mingling, there's this beautiful silver brick space, and our artists were welcoming the public in to teach them something that they had learned earlier that day or earlier that week. And it was a very exciting little interaction opportunity for people without a disability to maybe have their portrait drawn or just to interact with our folks, and they have something very valuable to share. So you're seeing some pictures back here of the acetate collages. That was a version of a clean project where we could have lots of ripped paper and then acetate over to have a very complicated visual layered collage without being a particularly complicated process. So is anybody interested in visual arts here? Anybody? Yeah. I think that this experience, this is only a 1 week experience. Every day it was about 7 hours in the museum. I think it was an exciting, I just wanted to share this little slice of what we do as an opportunity to both learn from the Warhol and to give back to the public of Pittsburgh. Does anybody have any questions? I can keep it short. And then the capstone of this program is we had a public exhibition alongside the Real Abilities Film Festival.
What do you do outside of the 1 week at the Warhol?
Sure.
Something on a regular basis?
Yes. So every week through the school year term, every Tuesday through Thursday, we have a 2-hour program we just moved to the Pittsburgh Center for the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts and Media, formerly known as PCA, now PCA and M, after it merged with filmmakers. So in that class, we have a group of artists that's been really dedicated to building their own personal, professional, creative portfolio. We have a guest artist program where artists from the community, most of the time it's someone who does not have a disability, comes and shares their work with our class. We have a creative dialogue between our artist and the community artist, and then have a month of classes inspired by that guest artist. Every term, so there's a fall term. It's in Shady Side, so it's at the corner of 5th and Shady Avenue. It's a big yellow building. It's next to the Frick. And then our Wednesday program is really focused on professionalism in the arts and specifically craft. So we have a group that's been working on a line of ceramic products. And so it's both learning how the making process and the marketing and selling process. So how to communicate with customers, how to take that product to the handmade arcade, which will be in the handmade arcade selling our little wish dish line. So yeah, we're always exploring a theme. So right now we're exploring the landscape that is the PCA, and so we're looking at the trees around that site. And Bob Ross is our inspiration artist for this month. Then we're going to explore outsider artists in our spring term. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Next, we have Alicia DeGiorgi, who founded the Playhouse Accessibility and Inclusion Committee in 2016. Since founding Forming the committee with 3 original members, it's grown to 10 committee members comprised of students and staff who volunteer at the Pittsburgh Playhouse and the Cultural Trust. Outside of the Point Park community, Alicia serves on the Inclusion and Accessibility Committee for Bricolage Production Company and serves as an immersive companion. She's also a proud volunteer describer for Be Specular, which lets blind people see through your eyes. Welcome, Alicia.
Thank you, everybody. It's so really thrilling, and I feel so proud to be included in a panel of people such as those who have spoken today. And I can honestly and truly say I draw inspiration from all of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It means a lot. And I really love that, the power of not yet. I'm taking that. I like that. It's good. So my world is theater, and theater means a lot to me. The adventure I have when I enter a theater is always a ride, and I feel very strongly that it is possible to make that ride accessible and inclusive for everybody. My committed involvement in arts and disability really began on an immersive production which I was managing and running in downtown Pittsburgh. And for those of you who don't know what an immersive production is, it kind of is really literally what it says. It immerses the audience member into the story as part of the action and playing of the play. It's typically in a found or site-specific space like a giant warehouse, or it could be in a theater. And it can span miles of playing space, so not just one tiny theater. Sometimes it can be over an entire community. This particular immersive production was produced during the Pride and Arts Festival along the busy streets and alleys and inside our theater and other spaces like bookstores, empty storefronts, and even the old Sweet Licks, which I believe is now the Pittsburgh Popcorn Company, a parking garage, and the steps of a church on Smithfield. The play spanned from Smithfield and 7th all the way down to the convention center to reveal the view, a very beautiful view, of the Allegheny River. For a majority of the show, the patrons are blindfolded with tightly sealed light-locking sleep masks, except for when they interact with 2 actresses who are actually blind. These 2 actresses invite them into their private worlds. Our production team successfully guided these blindfolded patrons through these adventures, and these patrons had to release all trust to us as their eyes and experience a moment in time where they no longer have the privilege of sight. I learned very early on in the rehearsal process with our actresses what it meant to make the experience of the rehearsal inclusive for an actress, and that it was gonna take us all out of our comfort zones and that we had to try and trust humanity. The first time that I had to greet one of my actresses who was blind, she was getting off of a bus from Squirrel Hill into downtown. And the only thing I knew was that she was blonde and that she had a companion dog who was looked a little bit like a golden lab. And I was kind of nervous because I had to bring her from her bus stop to the theater. I went really early and just waited, was watching for the bus to come. Finally, I see her bus pull up, and it is 5 o'clock on a weekday. And so this bus stop is booming. And I wait, and I'm watching, and I see this woman get off the bus, and she's smiling, and she gets off the bus, onto the street, back onto the curb, and she's just standing, waiting, because she knows that someone is coming to greet her. And I'm kind of paralyzed with a little bit of nervousness. I want to impress her. I want her to trust me, and I want her to feel safe with me. And so I snap out of it, and I was like, "Hey, Anne, it's Alicia. I'm here to take you to the theater." And she just smiled, this really huge smile, and put her hand out to shake my hand, and I shook her hand, and then she grabbed my arm, and she said, "Let's go." And I was like, "Okay, we're going." And we had a great conversation. We get to the theater, and little did I know, this was her first time ever riding a city bus all by herself. And I didn't even find that out until much, much later. But she was so confident and so happy in that moment that I just kind of took whatever that energy was and moved forward with it. The subject matter of the show exposed me to a more complete understanding of how important inclusion is. One particular performance, a gentleman in a power wheelchair arrived and bought a ticket. I got a call over my comm headset that he was at check-in and ready to begin the show. I now had an opportunity to take what I learned from the production process and apply it to a real-life inclusion moment. Although he could navigate just fine through the busy streets of Pittsburgh sighted, the moment we blindfolded him, we quickly realized there would be challenges we had not foreseen, including getting him into a rickshaw in the back alley of Liberty Avenue. Yeah, we did that. A couple of deep breaths, some quick brainstorming over our headset comm with my leaders and teammates led me to ask this gentleman, can you take your chair off power, and would you be willing to let me guide you? He was feeling very adventurous that day. And he said yes, a total stranger trusting me to lead him across downtown in the middle of 2 festivals, blindfolded. Since I knew the path of the show so well, it was easy to see areas that might need to be accommodated and other areas that went on exactly as usual. This man got to feel, smell, and hear the bustling streets of India, was read a bedtime story from The Girl in the Zebra Pajamas, went to a dance party and met a woman who went blind in her 20s and drank bug juice with her at a picnic table. Met another woman who has been blind since birth and typed a letter on her Braille typewriter in her boudoir, and at the end of a really long walk, took off his blindfold alongside 10 other patrons to realize we had brought them all a quarter of a mile away from the theater down to the river. Like all the patrons, he was so amazed by the journey and began to decompress and discuss with the rest of the group as our final actress finished her operatic song and collected their blindfolds. I quietly slipped back to the theater for post-show cleanup. It was very important to all of us on the production team that this person have the same opportunity to experience this immersive theater adventure. As I shut down for the day and decompressed myself, I found myself so affected with happiness that we didn't give up or just say, no, this would be too challenging to pull off, and that this patron got to experience what everyone else did and all together. I was affected in such a way that I knew if I could push a motorized wheelchair through downtown festivals and hardly miss a beat, that there was no room for excuses, and I wanted to be a part of contributing to that. That company was Bricolage Production Company, and I had the privilege of working with them and learning from their leadership and priority they put on making their theatrical experiences inclusive for all audiences. Even after I moved on from working with them for full time, I continue to volunteer on their Inclusion and Accessibility Committee and serve as an immersive companion. When I came on as a full-time staff member here at Point Park University's Pittsburgh Playhouse, I was given the opportunity to attend the LEAD conference, Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability, hosted by the Kennedy Center every year. I made a pitch to my direct supervisor, who's here with me today, Kim Martin, and artistic director Ron Lindblom, and they used development funds to send not only myself, but our house manager and our box office manager. I must have made a pretty good pitch. At the conference, I was inspired, motivated, and able to obtain the proper information and knowledge to bring back to my organization to start making steps for our productions to be more accessible. The Playhouse offers so many artistic and cultural programs, it was only natural we make it accessible for as many people as possible. When I came back and shared what I'd learned and asked for funding to try an audio description performance of one of our junior shows, Stone Soup, it was granted. There were many steps, though, to get this first audio description performance in motion. I had to set up the technology with our sound engineer. We had to hire the describer. We had to schedule the describer's rehearsals, reach out to those who might be interested in beta testing the service for us since it was our first time, and make sure that we had the personnel on hand and the training for ushers in front of house. We luckily hired Marianne Graziano, who I worked with and trusted for years at other theaters as an audio describer for people who are blind or low vision. We invited a small group of students from the School for the Blind and explained that this was our first time and wanted to learn from them and collect their feedback and advice. We also invited 2 adult special guests, one who is with us today, you'll talk to him in a little bit, who are active in the blind community and have been to many theatrical productions. Being transparent with them was so important so that they knew that we were still learning and we needed their feedback. We held a Q&A post-show and our student stage manager joined us after for the conversation. I made a survey of about 7 questions for the audience so that we could take the feedback and work on ways to make it better for next time. And there was a next time. The Playhouse Accessibility and Inclusion Committee formed shortly after that with the support of Kim and Ron. They also agreed to provide audio description and ASL once a semester. Our committee has grown to 10 members comprised of students and staff, and we hope to continue to grow. Since forming the committee, we've developed a mission statement, which is, we believe everyone deserves the opportunity to access the Pittsburgh Playhouse's artistic and cultural programming. The Pittsburgh Playhouse's Accessibility and Inclusion Committee strive to provide an inclusive experience for students and patrons of all abilities. We provide resources and customer service within our means to enhance the theatrical production. Our committee offers and coordinates ASL and audio description every season with the support of our artistic director and producing director. And we even got the opportunity to volunteer and coordinate the audio described performance of Molly Burke for the speaker series with Andy Conti. Thank you for that. We offer curb-to-seat assistance when requested and try to make patrons feel comfortable in our theater. We have also volunteered as committee members outside of Point Park for the Cultural Trust Broadway Tour sensory-friendly performances of Wicked and The Lion King. Most recently, we were awarded a grant from the Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council that one of our founding members, Anthony Dennis, applied for to help support our ASL programming. With the help of Development Officer Kristen DeLuca, who is also here today, we hope to apply for more grants and reach out to more resources to expand and grow our programming. I really believe, with an open mind, positive outlook, willingness to learn, a little bit of patience, and the proper support system, we can teach our future theater makers how important it is to include everyone in the adventure that I get to enjoy every day, which is theater. Go in bold and go in confidently. Thank you so much for listening.